Sarah McDermott. On July 11, 1990, 23-year-old Sarah McDermott, who had immigrated with her family from Scotland to Australia 3 years earlier, had been playing tennis after work with two friends at what was then known as Flinders Park in Batman Avenue, East Melbourne. Later, the friends walked together to Richmond train station, catching a train to Caulfield, then changed to a Frankston service. While Sarah's friends would leave the train at Bondi Beach railway station, Sarah would remain on the service for 3 additional stops to Kananook railway station, where her car was parked. At approximately 10:20 p.m., Sarah was witnessed disembarking the train at Kananook station and heading for the poorly lit car park. This was the last time anyone saw Sarah alive. The following day, Sarah's parents reported her missing, and an investigation commenced. Police quickly suspected foul play based on blood stains found beside her red 1978 Honda Civic abandoned in the station car park, and drag marks leading into the bushes, as well as finding a cigarette lighter on the ground belonging to Sarah. Later, witnesses reported that Sarah got off the train and crossed the footbridge to the car park, where some people heard a woman shouting, "Give me back my keys." It is unknown if this was Sarah. A 21-day extensive air, sea and land search with over 250 police yielded no results. 21 years later, in 2011, police interviewed convicted serial killer Paul Denier under suspicion of his potential involvement in Sarah McDermott's disappearance. Denier, also known as the Frankston serial killer, committed 3 murders between July 11 and July 30, 1993 in the area surrounding where Sarah McDermott was last seen and had gone missing. Denier denied any involvement in the disappearance of McDermott, and police have not since pursued Denier as being involved with the case. In May of 2014, News Corp Australia claimed police investigators considered convicted Australian serial killer Bandali Debs to be a suspect in the case. However, like Denier, the investigation in Debs' possible involvement yielded no results. Sarah McDermott remains missing, and her case remains unsolved. Patricia Schmidt. Patricia Schmidt studied in Seacombe High School and worked at the Burger King restaurant on the corner of South Road and Marion Road, Darlington. On 17th December 1971, Patricia had just finished work and was waiting for her father to collect her. Patricia's father was working as a barman at the nearby German club and was running 10 minutes late. Patricia decided to walk home instead of waiting for him. That was the last time she was seen alive. She was reported as a missing person at 9:30 a.m. that day, after having failed to return home after work. At about 6:30 p.m. on Saturday, 18th December 1971, Patricia's naked body was found. Her body was found partially hidden in tall grass on a lonely stretch of road near Hallett Cove, south of Adelaide. There was evidence located at the scene that indicated she had been sexually assaulted before being murdered. Patricia was wearing black lace-up boots, hot pants, a red jumper, and an orange coat the last time she was seen alive. When she was found, she was only wearing the boots. The jumper and the coats were draped over her body, and her bra was hanging on a wire fence nearby. There were drag marks on the crime scene, which suggested she was dumped on the verge after being killed somewhere else. Traces of weathered pink and white paint were found on her body. There were also traces of different metals, predominantly nickel and nickel silver. At the time, police investigated the possibility that she had been in an engraver's or key cutter's workshop. A kangaroo skin purse that Patricia carried was never found. During the investigation, it was found that only nights before, on December 14, 1971, she had been walking home when a man stopped and offered her a lift. which she had accepted. She told her friend that once she got into the car, the man suggested they go for a drive to the Adelaide Hills, but she refused. He then started driving towards Hallett Cove, but Patricia had insisted she be taken home, and the man finally dropped her at her house. She described the stranger as old, about 30, not attractive, with pimples and a flash car. It is unclear if police believed it was the same man who murdered Patricia, but police would like to question him. With advances in technology, decades later, additional forensic testing was carried out by police in 2001, which led to 7 men being ruled out of the inquiry. Despite some promising leads, police have not had any major breaks in the case. It has been almost 47 years since her tragic death, and to date, no arrest has been made. Her case remains unsolved. The Wanda Beach Murders. On January 11, 1965, best friends and neighbors Marianne Schmidt and Christine Sharrock headed down to Wanda Beach with 4 of Marianne's younger siblings. They arrived at the beach at about 11 a.m., but it was very windy and the beach was closed. The group then walked down the southern end of the beach and sheltered among the rocks. The youngest of Marianne's siblings, Wolfgang, still wanted to swim, so Marianne took him down to the shallow water away from the rocks. After a little while, they returned to the group and they all had a picnic together. At some point during the picnic, Christine wandered off. No one knows where she went or what she was doing during that time. Around this time, 8-year-old Wolfgang noticed a teenage boy hunting crabs. Later, he claimed to have seen the same boy twice more, once in the company of his sister and Christine, and again sometime much later, walking alone. However, Wolfgang has never been able to give an accurate description of the male, claiming at one time that he was carrying a homemade spear and at another time a knife. When Christine returned to the group, they decided to go for a walk into the sand hills behind the Wanda Beach. About halfway through the walk, as the younger children were complaining about the weather, the girls told the younger kids to wait, while they headed back to the rocks to collect their bags and belongings, then returned to fetch the kids and head home. However, instead, the girls continued further into the sand hills and laughed when the kids told them that they were going the wrong way. That was the last time the 4 Schmidt siblings would see Marianne and Christine alive. They waited in the sandhills until 5 p.m. before collecting their belongings and heading home. At 8:30 p.m. that night, the girls were reported missing. The next morning, local resident Peter Smith was taking his 2 young nephews for a walk through the Wanda Beach sandhills. Some distance north of the surf club, he discovered what appeared to be a store mannequin buried in the sand. He brushed away sand from the head and realized that it was a body. He notified the police from the nearby surf club. When the police arrived, they discovered the bodies of Marianne and Christine in the sand. When the bodies were uncovered, Marianne was found lying on her right side with her left leg bent. Christine was found face down, her head against the sole of Marianne's left foot. Christine's skull had been fractured and she had been stabbed multiple times. A long drag mark indicated that she may have tried to flee as Marianne was being murdered, only to have been caught, incapacitated, and dragged back to the body of her friend. Marianne's throat had been slashed and she too had been stabbed several times. Their clothes had been cut and the murderer had attempted to rape both of the girls. An intensive search was undertaken, but police were never able to locate the murder weapon. The last person to see Christine and Marianne was a local fireman, Dennis Dostine. Dostine was walking with his son in the area when he spotted Christine and Marianne walking about 700 meters north of the surf club. He told police that they seemed to be hurrying, and one of the girls often looked behind her as if they were being followed. Dostine had not seen anybody else though. Over the years, police investigated 3 suspects over the murders. The first, Alan Bassett, had been sent to prison for murdering another young woman in 1966. He later sent a morbid painting to a detective investigating the Wanda Beach murders, depicting the beach, blood trails, and a knife. However, Bassett was never charged with the murders. Some investigators believed the girls had been likely killed by one of the most notorious criminals in Australian history, convicted murderer Derek Percy. However, Derek died from cancer in 2013. While police believed Percy would give them a deathbed confession, he remained tight-lipped until he took his last breath. Another Australian serial killer, Christopher Wilder, was also strongly suspected. Wilder was eventually convicted of kidnapping, murder and rape in the United States, where he had fled after pleading guilty in Sydney Beach gang rape case in 1962. It is unknown if he was responsible for murder of Marianne and Christine. Unfortunately, Christopher died in 1984, without ever being questioned about Marianne and Christine's murder. The case was reopened in 2007 and 2013 when police tested DNA from a possible knife wipe on one of the girls' clothing, but so far the results have been inconclusive. No one has been charged with their murder, and the case remains unsolved. Joanne Radcliffe and Kirsty Gordon. On August 25, 1973, Joanne Radcliffe, 11 years old, and her parents, and 4-year-old Kirsty Gordon and her grandmother were at a match between two South Australian National Football League sides at Adelaide Oval. The two families were friendly, and they sat next to one another at every game. On that day, when Joanne wanted to go to the toilet, Kirsty's grandmother asked her to take Kirsty with her, and they returned without incident. About 30 minutes later, Kirsty again wanted to go to the toilet, and Joanne took her, but this time they did not return. When the children didn't return until 4 p.m., Joanne's parents left the stand and went to the secretary's office to report them missing. They asked if an announcement could be made. Their request was refused. The explanation later given was that nothing would have been heard over the crowd noise. This may have been true. However, Mrs. Radcliffe says that she was given a distinct impression that the staff in the office did not want the match to be interrupted. The parents were advised to return to the seat and report the matter to the police if the girls didn't turn up. Kirsty's grandmother stayed at the seats, while Joanne's parents spent the rest of the match searching for the girls, but they were never seen again. During the police investigation, it was discovered the assistant curator of the Oval had seen the girls living with a man. There were 4 sightings of the man with the girls, and in 3 of them, Joanne appeared distressed. One witness named Anthony Kilmartin was a 13-year-old who had been selling lollies in the Sir Edwin Smith stand. He said that on that day, he had to move over for the 2 girls who came walking down the stairs. He also said that he had seen a man go running after them towards the gate. The man had been watching the girls in the stand. In the police statement, he said that the man caught up with the girls and lifted the little one up and carried her to the gate. The bigger girl appeared frightened and had grabbed the man. At the time, Kilmartin thought the man was the girl's father, so he did not intervene. In one case, a man driving past went so far as to stop his car, but then decided it was none of his business and drove on. Kirsty Gordon and Joanne Radcliffe were seen with the man about 3 kilometers from the Oval, 90 minutes after they had left it. This was the last sighting. Neither they nor the man were ever seen nor heard from again. Later, based on the witness descriptions, a sketch was released by the police. There have been 2 suspects who bear a striking resemblance to the sketch. First being convicted rapist and double killer Arthur Stanley Brown, who had abducted, raped and killed sisters Susan and Judith McKay in 1970. The second man who resembled the sketch was a notorious South Australian paedophile Stanley Arthur Hart. Police later confirmed that Hart was a key figure in their investigation of the case. properties previously owned by Hart were investigated in 2009 and again in 2015. At his property, an old underground bunker was found, which had 2 entrances and could fit at least 4 adults. The bunker is believed to have been filled in sometime before 1975, but after the disappearance of the girls. Also, he reportedly rarely ever missed a North Adelaide match, so he was likely at the game that day. Despite nothing being found in the search, Hart is still considered a prime suspect. Unfortunately, Hart and Brown have both been long dead. Joanne and Kirsty remain missing to this day. The Gator murders. While it is still in operation, the Gator station is one of the most remote Australian outposts. By 1914, the station's original owners were gone, and new owners appointed a man named James Barclay to manage it. Barclay hired a cook named John Bamford, who was known to be erratic and hot-tempered, and Barclay was cautioned against his choice. A shopkeeper even warned Barclay against being drawn into arguments with Bamford. However, once Bamford got to the station, everything seemed to go well. Bamford started working at Gator station on December 14, 1917. On January 22, 1918, Harry Smith, the stepson of the original owner of Gator station and a good friend of Barclay's, arrived to deliver the mail. Neither Barclay nor Bamford were at the station. Both bedroom doors were locked. Bafflingly, the words "Home tonight" had been written in chalk across the kitchen door. During his visit, nothing appeared out of place. Harry saw the crops had been cut. He stayed at the station for 2 nights, but neither Barclay nor Bamford returned, so Harry left on the 24th January. Harry again returned to the Gator station late in the afternoon on 14th February 1918. The station was still deserted, and the mail still sitting where he had previously left it on the kitchen table. Harry was shocked to find Barclay's favorite dog, Baron, starving and neglected. He briefly searched the area again, stayed the night at the station, and left for Dargo the next day to raise the alarm. The last time both Barclay and Bamford were seen alive was when they left Talbotville on December 21, 1970, after voting in the public referendum. After searching for several days, Barclay's body was found in a shallow grave near Conglomerate Creek, about 420 paces from the station. He was found half buried. By the time his body was discovered, Barclay had already been dead for several weeks. An autopsy report showed that Barclay had died from a shotgun blast to the back. Interestingly, Barclay's own shotgun, which was still at the station, had recently been fired. Along with the shotgun wound, Barclay was also found to have facial injuries, possibly pointing to a fight prior to the shooting. To add to the mystery, detectives sent out from Melbourne made a startling discovery. It was a long ride out to the crime scene, and they attempted to fix themselves something to eat once they arrived. When the food turned an unsettling color, they found that a jar marked pepper was actually full of strychnine. Bamford was now a prime suspect, and a statewide search was begun. However, nearly a year later, in November 1918, police found Bamford's body half buried a few miles away. He had been shot in the head. A popular theory is that cattle thieves murdered the 2 men. Sid and Jack Beveridge, 2 brothers who owned a nearby station in the region, are thought to have become very wealthy off the back of cattle theft. The theory goes James Barclay had discovered the theft and the brothers murdered him to cover it up. They also then murdered Bamford to leave no witness at the crime. While this theory has some weight, there is little real evidence to back it up. According to the police reports, there was no livestock missing from Gator station. Records show detectives never questioned the brothers. Another theory was that Bamford killed Barclay and was then killed by Barclay's friends. However, no evidence was ever found to link this theory. Robbery was also suggested as a motive. Although several personal items were stolen from Barclay's home, other valuables were left behind, making theft an unlikely explanation. To this day, no one knows what happened to the two men, and their case remains unsolved.